The 5 gun laws dividing Arizona in 2025. Gun rights versus gun control. Arizona's 2025 proposals could reshape everything. We're diving into the top 5 most controversial changes on the table, from high-capacity magazine bans to the heated red flag law debate. Stick around because you might actually learn something. Number 5. Let's start with a big one. The potential regulation of high-capacity magazines and gas-operated semi-automatic rifles, including the AR-15, a weapon that has become a flashpoint in America's gun debate. Now, Senator Mark Kelly, who's seen firsthand the impact of gun violence, is pushing for the Go Safe Act at a federal level. This act would target these high-capacity magazines and certain semi-automatic rifles that have been used in numerous mass shootings. Advocates would argue that limiting the firepower accessible to civilians is a common-sense step toward preventing mass violence. But there's another side to this coin. Gun rights supporters argue that restrictions would do little to stop criminals, who would find other ways to carry out their intentions. They see this as a direct attack on their right to own firearms for self-defense and sporting purposes. So what's your take? Would banning high-capacity magazines actually make us safer, or would it simply disarm responsible citizens? At Relax Fit Tactical, we say if they do implement this, we're just gonna walk around with belt feds. Number 4, we have a proposal to expand background checks. If passed, this law will require all firearm transfers, including those at gun shows and between private parties, to be processed through a licensed dealer. Supporters of this measure argue that it's a necessary step to close the so-called gun show loophole, which allows guns to be sold without a background check. They believe this would help keep firearms out of the hands of felons and people with dangerous mental health issues. But many gun owners see this as a slippery slope. They worry that once private sales are restricted, it could pave the way for a national gun registry, something they fear could eventually lead to confiscation. They also argue that criminals who don't follow laws would not be deterred by the additional checks. Would closing the private sale loophole prevent crime, or is it just another way to tighten the screws on law-abiding citizens? Why do they even call it a loophole? It's just a private sale. It's not a loophole. Now, we at Relax Fit Tactical constantly go to gun shows. Larger companies selling newer guns do background checks. Older men with a 70s detective special do private sales, and some people come down to the shows to try and offload a rifle for some quick cash or to upgrade to something they want now, like a newer upgrade. Now, we think it's stupid to stop that, since the criminals don't need a gun show to sell their guns. Only sketchy thing I've ever seen at a gun show is, I plead the 5th. So let's just move on. Number 3, now let's talk about these waiting periods and age restrictions. Currently in Arizona, you can buy a semi-automatic rifle at 18, the same age you can join the military. But new proposals would raise the minimum age to 21 for these firearms, along with implementing a mandatory waiting period before any gun purchase is finalized. Now, the argument here is simple. Raising the age and enforcing a waiting period could prevent impulsive acts of violence, especially among young male adults, who are statistically more prone to risky behavior. Now, on the flip side, many feel that if an 18-year-old is considered old enough to go serve in the military and potentially sacrifice their life for their country, they should be trusted to own a firearm for self-defense. And as for waiting periods, critics argue that in situations where someone needs immediate protection, like a domestic violence victim, any delay in obtaining a firearm could mean the difference between life and death. So are these measures about safety, or are they about stripping away rights from some responsible young adults? Let us know what you think and why. I do know some 18-year-olds that should not have guns though. Maybe training. If you're under 21, definitely need a lot of training. Yeah, maybe that. Now, number 2, then there's the issue of firearm storage mandates. A proposed law would impose penalties on gun owners who do not securely store their firearms, especially in homes where children are present. Now, the idea is to prevent accidental shootings, which often involve children finding and playing with guns. Supporters of this measure point to studies showing that safe storage practices significantly reduce the risk of accidental deaths. However, opponents see it differently. Many argue that mandating how people store their guns is an overreach of government power, and that it could criminalize responsible gun owners who choose to store their firearms for quick access in case of emergency. Furthermore, they claim that safe storage laws are difficult to enforce and that responsible owners already take precautions. Should the government dictate how you keep a firearm in your home? How are they going to even check that? Are they going to come and knock on my door? What do you think would help reduce risks around the house? I mean, obviously education, we all know that. And finally, we reach the most controversial proposal, red flag law. Now, these laws allow for the temporary confiscation of firearms from individuals deemed a threat to themselves or others based on a court order. Supporters argue that a red flag law could prevent suicides and mass shootings by allowing authorities to act on credible threats before it's too late. Now, they believe that this kind of proactive measure could save lives when someone exhibits dangerous behavior. But the backlash is fierce. Opponents of red flag laws argue that they violate due process, allowing firearms to be taken away based on suspicion rather than proof. They worry that these laws could be misused against lawful gun owners, especially in cases of personal disputes or false accusation. Now, the fear is that an angry ex or a neighbor with a grudge could manipulate the system to disarm someone without just cause. The question we all have to ask is, are red flag laws a necessary safety measure, or are they a step too far in infringing upon our rights? I mean, I on one hand go, yeah, if you're an explosive, angry SOB that smacks weak people around, like, then a weapon in your hands is just asking for trouble. I get it, and typically the only people advocating for them are those types. But this is why this is the most controversial proposal, because all of that is subjective and hearsay. That is why the system that seems to work the best so far is its convicted felons get denied guns at stores, and it's illegal for them to purchase guns. I mean, to me, that's your red flag. These 5 proposals could shape the future of gun ownership in Arizona and maybe even the entire country. Let us know in the comments which of these proposals you think should or shouldn't become law. Remember, your voice matters.